Space Marine 2 is tearing through the gaming world as we speak, with the ferocity and success rate of an elite Terminator tearing through a horde of filthy Tyranid Xenos. The game has caught fire and has become a massive success, with a pretty big current active player base on Steam serving to illustrate that. Critical and fan reception have been, for the most part, positive, and consensus seems to be that Space Marine 2 indeed is worth your time and money. This video will try to add to this general consensus by pinpointing 3 specific reasons why Space Marine 2 stands out as a worthwhile play and why it's worthy of the great reception and massive hype it's garnered. Fair warning, there will be spoilers abound in this video, so proceed at your own risk. The first thing that stood out to me as soon as booting the game up in the initial hours of my playthrough is the masterful world building. The game pays meticulous attention to detail in bringing the world of Warhammer 40k to life. All you have to do as a player is look around and take it all in. The moment you set foot on the Ultramarine ship, you see your fellow Space Marines going about their business, but beyond the Marines, the ship is teeming with life. You see Adeptus Mechanicus priests tending to the technical maintenance of the ship and the many machines of war on board. You see servitors toiling away hard at work. You see cloaked devotees performing their various tasks with utmost dedication. What is truly impressive is how lore-accurate and immersive this representation of the Warhammer world is. You genuinely feel transported onto the deck of a battle barge, and this attention to detail really serves to make the ship feel lived in. Every side character, every element of the map design takes into account the lore and gives you an accurate representation of what life on this battleship set in this world truly would be like. And this extends beyond the ship into the entire game setting you get to experience. The game does a great job of bringing the threats of the Tyranids to life, immerses you into the thick of contested battlefields, allows you to commune with the Astra Militarum, who are also represented in a very detailed and lore-accurate manner. You get to interact with various other Space Marines and really get a sense of their highly militarized, honor-driven culture. The game does a great job of representing the horror of chaos and in its later stages too, my favorite scene being an encounter with a contingent of guardsmen who are losing their minds thanks to the influence of Tzeentch, a scene I consider to be a very nice touch, serving to portray the sinister and corrupting influence of the Changer of Ways in a great and once again very lore-accurate way. Every interaction you have with the game's world follows this general vein. The end result is that the game pulls off atmosphere masterfully, transporting you to the Warhammer world in a way I personally have never experienced in any game so far. The second point in the game's favor I have to touch upon is the simple and straightforward story. While complex, overarching narrative is great, sometimes simplicity is a much more effective way of telling a story. The game does not overextend, it does not mar itself in trying to give you something complicated and convoluted, but instead chooses to focus on a tight, contained, and focused narrative. Why is this more effective? Because the world the story is set in is a brutal one, where suffering is common and where survival is won through bloody effort. The nuances and complexities of morality are reduced to a mere black and white, especially through the lens of our primary protagonist, a Space Marine. We, as fans, may ponder the moral grays of the Imperium and at times the horrific nature of it, but for a Space Marine, an instrument of combat, these moral grays are naturally irrelevant. Fanaticism ingrained with a heavy sense of duty and loyalty, looking upon the enemy as an absolute evil, is a necessary bulwark against the countless horrors the galaxy is beset upon in 40k. The game really made me think. This level of fanaticism the Space Marines in the Imperium espouses, are they not the only viable defense when challenged by enemies like the Tyranids, who are an overwhelming and all-consuming, merciless, and hell-bent on destruction force? Is fanaticism not the only way to defend against the sinister and degrading forces of chaos corruption? The logic and behavior of these characters and these factions, they adequately match the nature of the world the setting is based in. They are merciless and deal in moral absolutes because the world they live in is a truly horrible and perilous place. In the same sense, the simplistic narrative the game puts forward is simply appropriate to the setting. The game gives you a story that evokes themes of loyalty, brotherhood, redemption, and betrayal in an effective manner. At the heart of it, it puts you in the shoes of a protagonist that looks upon the world through the lens of clearly defined parameters of good and evil, who is absolutely dedicated and loyal to the Imperium he fights for, and absolutely despises the evil of the ravaging Xenos hordes or the sinister forces of chaos. The story the game tells is thus effective in bringing the nature of the setting and evoking these themes. It takes you through a journey where loyalty is paramount and where redemption is a heartfelt wish, and through the confrontation of absolute evil, the protagonist affirms his loyalty and finds his redemption. It does not needlessly try to overcomplicate things. Through its simplicity, it manages to hammer home the chosen themes and bring this setting to life. And that, in the end, serves to provide the player with a satisfying and rewarding experience. The third positive, somewhat related to the second point, is that the game offers great character development. Some reviews have panned the game for having too plain of a narrative, but I have already explained why this is not a criticism, but instead a point working in the game's favor. In a similar vein, the character work in the game is simple but effective, enriching the player experience. Titus has his own satisfying arc, starting off as a bitter man who mistrusts those around him and ends up with his honor redeemed and, per his own words, his faith and brotherhood restored. Gadriel plays an integral part, constantly questioning his lieutenant. You get his motivations for doing so, and his actions are thus understandable and relatable. But he goes through his own simple journey of confronting his mistrust, only to see the error of his ways and come around, again something which was pulled off in a believable and relatable way. Chiron gets his own moment to shine, where he goes berserk after a cherished brother of his is killed due to treachery. He doesn't get much of an arc, but he gets enough so that he doesn't end up a bland companion that simply is a body to accompany you through the game and shoot at enemies. You feel his pain and understand his chaotic reaction. And then there's the chaplain. He doesn't get much screen time, but he gets just enough to be a constant presence and always critical eye upon your actions, and that culminates in a great twist at the end of the game. Again, it's not grandiose and it's not overcomplicated, but it's nonetheless effective. The game establishes him as a character and sets him up perfectly for the end reveal, where it all clicks and finally makes sense. You finally get the motivation behind his actions in the game so far. Pop culture is rife with stories, be it on TV, movies, or games, where you get a complex story only to be disappointed by it because simple rules of character development are not followed. These stories feign complexity, but offer something which is in essence poor. When lacking actual character development to evoke and earn emotion and to connect the audience to the story and the characters, all other spectacle or complexity that supposedly is delivered simply falls flat. Space Marine 2 is not pretentious. It gives you something simple, but something that works. The game's story establishes and pays off its characters in an effective manner, and as a result, it works better as a narrative experience. It gives you what is most necessary, and that makes it much more satisfying of a meal, working where it counts the most instead of losing its focus in an ill-advised attempt to offer unnecessary complexity. And thanks to that, as previously stated, it simply provides you with a more rewarding experience. All in all, Space Marine 2 is a game that works effectively as what it is. It is exactly what you expect it to be. And that's not a bad thing. It transports you to the Warhammer world, it takes you along an effective story with satisfying character arcs, and makes you feel like you are truly a Space Marine as a result. Any fan of the franchise is sure to enjoy this experience. But more so, the game is a breath of fresh air through its simple effectiveness, giving you a fun and rewarding experience overall. And in that sense, it is definitely worth your time and money.